Hello, welcome to Node Foundation CTC meeting for the 14th of December 2016. And we're going to jump straight into it with a stand-up. And first on the list is Anna.
Hi, yeah, basically just the usual last week. Took a look at PRs and reviewed them. Yeah, next up would be, who's here?
It's not Bradley. Ben, Chalker, Chris, Colin. Is Colin here? Nope.
Nobody's here.
Evan, you're next.
Yeah, I've been working on cherry picking some to the V7 staging branch, and then I've been working on a PR to make crypto.randombytes accept a buffer. Next is Jeremiah.
Hi, aside from miscellaneous PRs and issues, I've been working a lot on the Node.js GitHub bot. So currently, it's capable of attempting backports to V7, which is of course technically a backport from master, and also to V7, V6, and V4. It tries to do those on the staging branches. Currently, there's an odd problem that sometimes occurs that I'm still working to track down, as well as getting sort of how it works a little bit cleaned up so it's not quite as noisy. That's still going to take a bit. Currently working on trying to get tests out for it, which is pretty difficult because it tries to do all the Git stuff, it needs to spawn like 8 or 9 child processes throughout the entire thing. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but let's say 7. It's a little bit tricky to test, but I'm working on that stuff. So it's coming along. Next is Fedor.
Hi. Yeah, I have been mostly working on LL Node stuff, some usual reviewing of pull requests and issues. Did some and continue to do some experiments with a Link T, so sort of to see which way it could go with Node.js core if we would ever decide to use it. And meanwhile, thinking about the stream base and how to make it good again. Because we've seen recently some issues with it, and also I'm helping James with HTTP2, so I kind of need to think about it more because it will be used for HTTP2 as well. Next is, I think, Josh.
Yeah, what did I write here? So I'm helping finalize the trace event PR, which we might talk about a tiny bit today. I need to catch up on node inspect and some of the debugger issues. Haven't actually even finished all the stuff we said we would do at the collaboration summit, so I'm hoping to wrap some of that up this week. Actually been the past week pretty involved in some internal stuff. And then I just wanted to FYI, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be pretty much offline, so I'll probably miss the next couple meetings. Next is Michael Dawson.
Right, so I've been working a bit on the process to allow workgroups more access to build jobs, some miscellaneous benchmarking workgroup work, landing some PRs there. Continued to work with the team on the ABI stable module API, landed DPS as we discussed last week, MISC review comments and lands. And as Josh mentions, as I said, I'm going to actually be away the next 2 weeks as well, so we'll miss any meetings that are in those 2 weeks as well. Next is Michael Rogers.
Hey, I finally found the unmute button. Yeah, I've just been following up with all the stuff from the board meeting at Node Interactive. Don't have a lot of kind of technical updates or anything like that.
Brian White next on the list here.
Okay, I've mostly just been working on kind of preparing some performance-related PRs. Other than that, just the normal reviewing PRs and commenting on issues. The next is Ali.
Hi, I've been a bit too buried with work stuff, so I haven't been able to do too much. A few issues and PRs here and there. I'm a bit backlogged on the inspector and CLI debugger issues that I'm hoping that I can catch up on soon. Next would be Rod.
Yep. So likewise, I'm a bit snowed under with some work stuff. But highlights for Node stuff, aside from board and foundation things, I've been working with DigitalOcean on a post-mortem for the downtime we suffered a few days ago. If anyone recalls, we had there was a major slowdown in traffic. People couldn't download stuff, so we've got a post-mortem from DigitalOcean. We're just trying to decide what to do with it. We certainly don't want to blame DigitalOcean, but we need to update people on what how we were to blame for our architectural decisions. It is the main thing there. Next up is Michael, the other Michael, Targos.
Yes. Yeah, not much for me. You did the usual PR and issue reviewing, and I'm trying to read the code of the Node.js GitHub bot to try to contribute to it.
Miles.
Miles, if you're talking, you're muted.
Okay, so that was good timing because I was mostly stalling. Continued work on Canary in the Gold Mine. We've got a bunch of work moving forward, new collaborators on it. There's a pull request that came in today that should get it working on Windows, which is really awesome. We did a release of V6 and V4 last week, did a backporting session this week, which I live streamed, general issue and PR review, and some other, internal bits that need to get done. Next up would be Rich.
Usual PR and issue review, couple of several small test refactors and fixes, and then a bunch of, dealing with what is both the most amazing and most terrible aspect of any project like this, which is people. Next up is nobody. We're done.
Nobody, yeah. The terrifying people thing. Okay. Let's just do a quick review of last meeting, which I wasn't at, but there was a discussion of NPM upgrade, which is back on the agenda today. So I'd be interested to hear how that went down. The ABI stable module API. So that was sorry. There was no objections. Michael will leave it open for a few more days and land if no further objections. Was that landed, Michael?
Yes, I did land that.
Great. And moving Node Inspect into core. Let's. That goes to the TSC now for, yeah. And deprecating the old debugger is part of that, which I think is back on the agenda today. Is it? No, it didn't make it.
And I need to open the one in the TSC and something about the debugger. I think I need to open issues for both of those. Those are kind of on my plate, and I'll try to get to that in a couple days.
Yeah, the debugger one's kind of important, isn't it? Okay, cool. So on to the meeting today in this beautiful document that I think Rich is responsible for putting together. This is lovely, Rich. So first item on the agenda is the issue number 10155, which is actually not the discussion issue. This is restoring copyright in the headers, but the discussion for this is mainly over at the TSC repo, issue number 174. Now, without James here, we actually have Michael, who is a more authoritative source. And Michael, James is here now. But there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of concern about this. And I think maybe, Michael, you're in the best place to just give a quick summary and then answer any questions of people who have concerns here. But even though it's been open in the TSC repo, because the code is in the hands of the CTC needs to be the ones to sign off on this. So there does need to be some convincing work here. So Michael, give us a quick summary, and then we'll talk to objections.
Sure. So it's actually pretty basic, even though it's quite annoying. Basically, you're not supposed to modify the attribution and licensing information in files when the copyright holders or original authors had put them in the files. It's a basic tenet of pretty much every open source license, and is certainly part of how people have interpreted the MIT license. According to all of the lawyers that I've talked to, I'm not a lawyer, and just as a disclaimer, I'm not currently giving legal advice on behalf of the foundation. We actually have to get our counsel to do that if we want that. But everybody that we talked to so far kind of agrees that this needs to get restored in some way. If we want to modify it, we need to get the authors or people that have some sort of authorship right to it to modify it. And even if we did do that, we would need to first restore what had been removed and then modify it after that. And this is important for quite a few reasons. One is that like we shouldn't be violating our own license, and we actually, this is just like a bad thing in general. But also, like, we want people to respect the licensing info that we put in files, and we've actually already had instances where people have removed our attribution, and we've actually had to ask them to put it back. So the fact that we kind of unilaterally removed this at some point in time is not a very good sign. So yeah, that's essentially the situation that we're in. I'm sure there are questions, so I can dig into specifics of any of the questions.
Well, I would add to that is that I still have a question over whether the entire original header needs to be restored or whether it's just the copyright attribution. I'd rather not put the license text in there, for instance, and just have the copyright and a reference to the license text.
So I wanted that, and I asked for that and advocated that, and the legal people said that we need to restore it as it was. We could modify it later if we get some people signed on, but we first have to restore what was there as it was there, because the language in the MIT license essentially states that, you know, you have to retain the block as it is. It doesn't really allow you to modify how you're attributing the license. You need to get the permission of the author or that.
Can we ask?
We have, and we were told that they want to see it restored as it was before answering any questions about further modification. I mean, rightfully, I think that some people are upset that we violated the terms of a license, like, and they want to see it restored as a sign of good faith, I think, before anything else moves forward. So.
Okay, I can update my my PR then with the original ones. Now the PR is only going to touch the files that were changed in the original PR that still exist. A lot of that code has moved around or been altered since. And there's quite a few files that were touched in that original PR that no longer exist in our tree or have been renamed, or the code has been moved out to other places. So there is a question of what needs to happen with regards to that, or is just restoring the header in the files as they currently exist to the ones that still exist. Is that all we need to do?
How much of a subset of the files is that? Like, is it?
There's about 100 or so that no longer exist in the tree based on the.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of the ones that we're updating, are we updating 90% of them or 80% of them, or?
I'm not sure. There's about just under 1,000 files that will be touched.
how many will not be updated? Do you think? Is it? I'm just wondering if we should just update them all to just in terms of the good faith, update them all to be that, and then move on from there.
Not all files are necessarily that though.
Yeah. We also can't go and modify attribution information in files that were contributed by other people afterwards either, because we're doing the same thing to a completely different set of people, right? So by the way, I think that just restoring the ones that are still there is enough to then move forward with additional conversations to try and move towards a unified, smaller set. Hopefully just to a unified SPDX reference. But yeah, this is like kind of the first step in that direction. We can't really continue that conversation until this gets handled.
As a question, what did you do about src.node.js, which was like broken up by me? Is the license just updated in Bootstrap Node.js or also in some of the files that were split off of it?
That's the question. Is that the original files that were touched in the original PR? Some of those files and those locations do not exist. The code has been broken off into other files, moved around, or deleted outright. Right. Yeah, and the source Node.js is a really good example of that. Another example is testbuffer.js, which has been broken out and refactored. Those files were originally touched by that first PR. The attribution was removed. Is it okay that we don't restore that as attribution in the changed locations? I would,
about all
looking at the.
Weren't there a lot of test files moved as well?
Yeah, there's quite a few test files that were moved. Another example with the the Bootstrap node, there's been code added to that since that the changes have been made. They would not be covered under that attribution. So we have to restore the original header. That would end up changing the attribution in that for that additional code. So.
Yeah, I think that we can talk about that in a secondary step if like our further conversations come back to, oh well, there's some other files. I think that the most important thing is that we revert to the extent that we can the change that happened before, and then we can we're trying to actually clean up the code and get just a universal SPDX reference everywhere. And in fact, like even if we don't get permission to remove the blocks and go to an SPDX reference, we may want to add an SPDX reference to all those files anyway, just to make code auditing tools a little bit easier.
Hey, Michael,
we can talk about
this may be like a naive question that's already come up, but is there no way to get like a letter from Joyent that essentially lets us off the hook?
Joyent wants the so here's what happened in the IOJS days. A contributor, without speaking to a lawyer, removed all references to Joyent in the code base. They're not happy about that. Like that violated our own license, and they see it as like kind of a dick move. So they're not going to give us a letter letting us off the hook for that. Why would they? When we haven't made any good faith effort to restore what had been there.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree with the intent, and 100% agree with that we need to do this. It's just there are some complexities in how we do it that are going to make it rather difficult. And these files that have been moved or broken apart and not changing the attribution and the changes that have been added since then, that's where we're having some issue. So what I can see is in those files, like Bootstrap Node, restoring the original attribution, but putting in there some code copyright under this other code with a new attribution, where it's augmenting the original one. but the only thing I can see that would work. If they're not going to be happy with anything other than just seeing the original header as is, byte for byte, then we've got some problems.
Hold on. Like all new code is still under the same license and copyright attribution, just in a different file.
No,
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 not
the
necessarily.
attribution is different. The attribution says Node.js contributors. It doesn't say joined and Node.js contributors. And what we
I don't
want to
think
move.
that's possible to do then, because like it's not possible to restore it in the way it was, because that doesn't even exist anymore.
That's the question, but it is derived code. And if you look at the license, at the text of the license, it says the attribution must exist in any code that contains significant portions, so derivative code as well. So those, like the new Bootstrap node, would be considered a derivative of the original source node. Yes. So
Shouldn't that header be updated to reflect that then?
Okay. Hold on. We're getting like off in the weeds. Okay, like where we want to get to, like where we want to be, is a simple unified copyright attribution header and an SPDX reference in every file. That's where we want to get. That's like the best thing that we can. Now we can't get there.
I recognize that. I need to know what we need to
there politically without first restoring this kind of stuff. Now, if we
that's what I meant is restoring it. Okay.
Exactly. So if James does this first part and like forget for a second about the significant portions and other file stuff, like if they come back and say like, oh well, there's these other files that we're still worried about, then we can have this conversation. But it may not even be necessary because we may be after this to move to a better solution anyway.
Yeah, I would ask that we save any conversation about anything other than the practical matter of how do we do this. Like that conversation should be had at the TSC level or something, but probably not here. Like this is just how do we do it?
Okay. Michael, I kind of disagree that we don't need to worry about the substantive portions part. I mean, because if we are making a good faith effort to restore those headers for the code that was modified, we need to make an effort to add the attribution where that code currently exists. Otherwise, we are not faithfully restoring the attribution. We'll be doing it on maybe 90%, but we won't be doing all of it. So it may be that they're okay with that, but if the requirement is that we restore the attribution completely, then we have to touch those additional files.
Yeah, and we may, but it may, but also if we're able to move forward with a better solution after this, then we may be able to take a much easier route, which is like a simpler, more unified one with their permission, right? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we can't do this though for it like exactly word by word as what the original was. If it actually changes the current attribution though, like that doesn't work. But I guess we can save that for the thread.
Yeah, we shouldn't modify any attribution that's there. We need to insert this basically below any existing attribution, which looks really annoying because it probably will say copyright Node.js contributors and then copyright joined Node.js contributors, but that's technically what we're supposed to do.
Oh well.
Okay, any other questions that can be handled here, or can we move on? No. Okay, so take it to GitHub if you have more questions. We can bring this up again next week if there's more going on, but let's try and get it resolved as much as possible on GitHub. Okay, next issue is pull request number 9848, which is attempting to upgrade to NPM version 4. Jeremiah, are you the best person to give us a summary on where we're at with this?
Probably not.
Okay, who would like to give us a summary of where we're at with NPM? Oh no.
Yeah, I don't exactly remember what the outcome of the last meeting was. And basically nobody had a strong opinion on that. And we didn't have any more discussions since then. Maybe it's actually best to do what I think Miles or Jeremiah proposed at the start of the meeting. Like, get opinion from the NPM people.
So I've talked to the NPM people about this a little bit, and I believe that James was involved in the conversation as well. Personally, what I'd like to see happen would be getting NPM 4 into master as long as it's passing our test suite. I don't really see any reason, why we shouldn't have that on master and have people who are running off of master testing it out. The only question from me that's kind of floating is like, do we want to try to get it into V7 if we consider it to be like, non-breaking, because their version of major may not really align with ours, and a major change in dependency may not require a major change on our end. And if we're going to do that in the same way in which we've done an upgrade of V8 mid-cycle, what are the requirements? So, I don't think that we should block landing NPM 4 onto master, and I think we should put together some requirements to give to NPM as far as what we'd like to see from them or what we'd like to see from us, before we'd be willing to upgrade it in V7.
Yeah, so going on to master is easy. Like, I can do that today. There's not really a reason not to put it onto master, I think, unless someone objects. The question is really, do we backport it to V7, and like, do we consider anything there like actually breaking? And again, this comes back to the question that we had around npm 3 was, well, is this like part of our API? Like, we ship this as like, I don't know what you want to call it, a peer dependency or bundled dependency, bundled peer dependency or something. I don't know, but it's not really part of our API. We just kind of like ship it. So yeah.
I think the major question seems to be about the nature of the breakage between 3 and 4. And do we have a handle on that, or is that something we need to get the NPM team to give us details on?
My understanding was Anna understood that the best of any of us.
Well, I mean, like, they did post the list of breaking changes in the pull request that we are talking about. For some of the things, yeah, I do, and I wouldn't consider those like breaking changes. For others, like npad has been removed. I have no idea what that means, like literally, and so, yeah.
I think npad is where tests are run on install for all packages. But this not supporting partial shrink wraps, I think, is something that could be a little iffy. I just don't know the use case out there.
They also got rid of pre-publish, which is actually that's pretty breaking.
They deprecated it. They didn't remove it.
Oh,
does
never
it
mind.
give
So
a
that's been
warning?
deprecated.
Is there actually like any runtime effect of that, or is that just like a docs thing?
I can try to look that up.
I can run some tests as well and find out exactly.
So I guess the question here is, like, we were fairly firm on npm 3 because of the major change in user experience, that we should consider it a breaking change. This is much less delta than 2 to 3. So the outstanding question is whether anyone thinks that this is enough of a change of user experience to warrant calling it a breaking change for Node's perspective. There's a few things in there that I see as concerns, but I'm not sure they'd be necessarily breaking. I guess there's a couple of questions like the npm scripts prepend thing, plus also the partial shrink wraps are the ones that I'd be concerned about.
Hey, sorry, I'm actually joining late, but with this, with the upgrade, would anybody's current semi-sane workflow break?
Yeah, that's the question we need to answer.
I don't know that that's a question we can answer, to be honest with you.
I'm pretty sure that like NPM said there was like very, very little people that like ran into any of those conditions. Any of the like edge cases where those would break. That was like all the messaging I've gotten so far.
Okay, so it seems to be difficult to make it progress. So how about we do this instead? We bring it back for a vote next week. So we'll put the CTC on notice that there will be a vote, and then decide it that way. Because otherwise, we're just going to keep on discussing it without really coming to a conclusion because it's all a bit too vague and we don't really know. Does that sound good?
I mean, okay. So on the flip side, like we can already land this in master. But like since the changes in this particular version are like very, very small, it may be a good opportunity to actually do that. And then like essentially have like a revert ready if we need it. And then we can it's like kind of a gauging thing. So if someone was actually hit by like one of these things in like a non-backwards compatible way, even though they're like really like quite obscure, if we have like actual like noise about that, like that tells us that we need to be more careful than maybe we would be otherwise. But otherwise it sort of is like an indicator that we're not really likely to run into those things, and maybe that's like information that we need for the future, that this might be a good opportunity to get. Maybe that's not the case, but it could be.
So I just ran a quick test on pre-publish. Pre-publish still works. It just gives a warning about how its behavior is going to change in NPM 5. So we should find out what the timeline is for NPM 5 and whether or not that's going to be ready in time for Node 8. Because if that's the case, and there's going to be bigger deltas and change, it may be good to get this in 7 so people at least get the deprecation warning, so we're not just like changing behavior on them randomly.
Jeremiah, just to your point, I wonder whether people would actually report them to us if they had those kinds of problems. I'm not sure that it would be natural for a lot of people to say, "Oh, I've just encountered a problem with NPM. I'm going to go report it to the Node people." I'm not sure we'd hear about them as like in the same way that we'd hear about breaking changes on our end.
Right. We might be able to coordinate a bit with NPM to get them, or to get like some amount of watching then, or I don't know, whatever on their issue tracker to help notify us of that sort of thing if they thought it might be happening. That could be, I mean, that'd be good metrics for them too. So we might be able to coordinate with them with that.
Okay. Anyone object to just taking it to a vote next week, giving everyone notice, and then doing a vote so that we can get this resolved?
That sounds fine.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Be on notice. Voting next week. Okay. So next item is trace event support. So that's pull request number 9304. Michael Dawson, where are we at with this?
Yeah, I started writing notes. I can take it.
Okay, go for it, Josh.
The notes are mine, so I just was collecting my thoughts, and I asked Michael at the beginning of this call whether we might bring this up here. Essentially, the trace event PR from the V8 team is pretty much ready to land, except that Michael Dawson expressed concerns that it is the implementation is tied to V8. It's not like deeply tied, but it is tied because we're tied to V8. And should we do something about that, or should that affect this PR? So yeah.
I think the change is relatively small that would be required to you know,
I think the objection that I brought up was, one of the options is to abstract whatever this is individually. but it's really part of V8 platform, and maybe we should abstract the entire V8 platform out at once, including this, and then maybe that should be a separate issue and not hold up this PR. I think that was my...
Yeah, the way I was coming from is if somebody wants to plug in a new trace engine, by deferring this piece, you basically force them to figure all that out and maybe take that on. So it's a barrier to somebody else. Whereas if we do the thing where we don't need to fully figure out that abstraction of the V8 engine, but just enough that somebody else could easily implement the 4 or 5 functions that it actually uses from this. I mean, I think effectively what it needs is, when I looked at it, it's that the V8 engine needs a pointer back to its own data. And so, in the trace, we end up having a way where you can get that pointer, it then goes through all the macros and gets handed back to V8, which is a pretty generic thing, right?
So the way I see it, I think, that's all doable. But at this point, so having this PR open means that it's not easy to collaborate on it. It's all on Matt's plate to continue taking this forward. So none of these things are complex or complicated. They just need to be done, and it would be nice to have some collaboration on those. And yeah, so I'm not sure if it's the best idea to hold it up. I do agree with the general idea that this should be generalized.
Hey, and okay, so
Agreed that should happen. Then land this and then do that in a follow-up PR.
if we forget the fact that trace events has been integrated into V8, and that you can look at trace events in V8, I don't see why. I mean, it's basically a header file, and any engine should be able to implement similar functionality using the API in the header file, correct? Because like I've used it, and it's like, okay, well, I just want to trace when this thing is called in my code. It's like
It should, except that it actually includes V8 specific files. That's all.
At the bottom of those macros, Trevor, is the V8 specific implementation.
Like it actually has, it's fairly generic except for this one place where it actually uses the V8 types, which breaks that separation. That's all.
Hey, Ollie, is that that part? I've looked at it, but is that necessary for like the overall API that's used by the user?
So an abstraction can be put into place, but it doesn't exist right now, right? So you need a platform to use, and Node is built on top of V8. So, and that's what we have available. That's the only thing that's available right now. So the question is, who has the burden of adding the support for the next VM? Is it the person who's building this PR as a first step? Do we allow collaboration in the Node repo, or I mean, so right, the way it is right now, that PR, I think it's ready to land, and the work that's needed to make it abstracted out is fairly simple and very well understood. So,
well, as far as burden, I'd say whoever is trying to implement Node on top of another VM, like.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it. So if it's a new VM, I agree 100% with the burden. If we want to make it easy for somebody to say, okay, well, I want to plug in my own trace engine, then do we need to have this barrier in place?
Then Ollie, like, what about something like how in the header files you have V8 platform, right? Where it's like, okay, well, it's up to the user to implement platform specifics, but here's the API. And then all I'm thinking is for this PR, it's like you just basically move that same code block over so it's not located in that specific header file.
sorry, I'm not sure if I followed that. So you're saying, okay, could you repeat that?
Let me type it out. It'll be easier for me to do that in the issue or in the PR. But don't let whatever I'm saying hold it up from landing.
Yeah. So And by the way, to be clear, like I'm not saying it's a burden to do. I just think that having it dependent on one person and holding up this PR may mean that this is held up indefinitely waiting for that person, because Matt is also focusing on FFI. So and I don't think it's necessary to make this PR be held up by the need of for this particular abstraction to be put in place. If there was a fundamental disconnect on whether this abstraction is something we can never escape out of, I think that would be a reason to me to hold up the PR.
Yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to prevent it from I don't want to have it just sit out there and land. My preference would be that it land and then it get fixed up, but it sounds like what you're saying is that's not going to happen because Matt's attention is going to be somewhere else, right?
Well, I mean, so having a pull request that's pretty huge open for a very long time means that, I mean, there's always going to be things that continue popping up. Question is, when is it, I mean, what is necessary to make it land so that the individual pieces can be identified? And then it's not necessary that Matt is the only person who's going to do that work. There's collaborators who could do it. I could work on that as well. But the thing is, right now it's one PR, and it's very hard to make incremental sort of collaboration on it because until the PR lands.
Yeah, and
I agree, and it can land in master.
I'm certainly in agreement with that as well. Like, I don't think we have to hold it up to fix everything. My comment was that was one area we should sort of have consensus on improving. But I'm happy with it to land and then do it afterwards.
And we can call this experimental as well. So we have the option of pulling it out again if we really can't resolve concerns.
We did mark it as experimental. So if somebody does that flag, it will put out an experimental thing.
Well, so we should use that as a way to land things that we're not entirely 100% on, but we know it's in the right direction, and I think this qualifies.
Yep.
Yeah, I've certainly already said I'm happy that we land it in advance of making that change. Just feel that change should be made at some point.
Okay, well, then we know what to work on when it lands. Any objections to that process? Landing experimental, we know what needs to be done. If we can't get it done, by version 8, then maybe we pull it out, or maybe we do something else with it. But I don't see how we can't get it done. It's there's enough people here that know what needs to be done. Okay, good. Anything else before we move into Q&A? Nope. Okay, so it's a chance for Q&A on our public live for our listeners who are not on this call. So anyone that's listening to the live stream, if you have questions for the CTC to answer, please drop them into I believe the YouTube chat is the best place for that. But there's also a number of other places you can do it if convenient. So there's the issue for this meeting. There's also IRC where you can hit up one or more of the CTC members. So we'll give a couple of minutes to wait for that, and let us know if you've got anything.
Someone has mentioned that in regards to NPM 4, pre-publish was not just a docs change, so I assume it also prints a warning of some sort.
And somebody verified that already on the call. Was that Miles?
Yeah, I can confirm it throws a deprecation warning when you run npm install. npm warn pre-publish on install, and it just has the information about it going away and how it's going to change in npm 5. Actually, I think that's quite useful. But
yeah, and that's actually a case for merging this in version 7 to get the warning out there into users' hands.
I agree.
So just so you know, like I think one of the NPM people said there are a total of 180 modules on the registry which would actually be affected by that. So that's not a lot.
That's public modules. It could be private ones, but yeah, that suggests that the usage is extremely low anyway.
Yeah, the registry. I think. Yeah.
Can someone go through the upcoming meetings while we wait?
Sure. We have CTC meeting next week again. Same. Oh, that's different time. So it's 4 p.m. UTC, which is 12 p.m. Pacific time. So we rotate back again, and then the TSC meeting is tomorrow, and that's this same time slot tomorrow. Anyone else aware of any other meetings that are scheduled? Nope. Okay. Any other questions before we close that out?
There is a doodle out
8
for the
a.m.
next benchmarking work group meeting, so that we can note that.
Okay, and there's an issue for that.
Yep.
In the benchmarking repo.
With a link to the doodle.
Right. So if anyone wants to get involved in benchmarking, head over there and put your name on the time doodle, and that'll get sorted.
I just wanted to, Rod, you said it had the wrong time Pacific for the CTC meeting next week. It's actually 8 a.m. Pacific.
Right, 8 a.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. UTC. Okay, then if there's no more questions, let's wrap up the public portion of this meeting. Thanks everyone for attending, and thanks everyone for listening in on the live stream. Bye-bye.
Bye.